Thanks very much. Just let me try to get that sun out of my left eye. There we go. Let me also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're meeting on this morning and pay my respects to their elders past and present. Let me acknowledge my fellow candidate for Ryan, Sandra. Thank you for coming out today. It's a shame we couldn't coax either of the other two main candidates to be with us. It's great to see. That sounds too loud. No? Okay. It's great to be here at the University of Queensland to talk to you about this topic that really is very very close to my heart. Higher education, I think, is crucial to our future, and that's what I want to talk about. I like it at events like this to push to the end of my speech the kind of hard policy stuff about what Labor's doing, and because I know that's important and many of you want to hear about that. But what I'd like to start with is some of my reflections to give you a sense of where I come from on this topic, because I think politicians too often like us to focus just on the issue of the day or the dollar amounts, because it lets them off the hook for the issue of every other day, that the issue that comes up every other day of the term. So I'd like at the start to give you a sense of my values on this, and that's really easy for me to do because the University of Queensland sits very much at the heart of my political narrative, the kind of story about how I got involved in politics and got motivated. I go back to when I was in high school, and I was one of those kids that really should have gone to university but was concerned that I wouldn't be able to afford it. And in my year 12, it was very clear to me that the reason I was going to get the opportunity to go to university was thanks to the efforts of then the Keating federal government and the Goss state government. You might think it's a bit strange that I say the state government, but I was incredibly fortunate to have gotten a scholarship from Wayne Goss to come here to university, named the TJ Ryan Scholarship after the same bloke as the seat of Ryan. And that really, for me, made all the difference. I used the first instalment of the scholarship to buy a car, which these days I'm pretty sure would be called a clunker, and I probably could have got $2,000 for it at the end. It was that experience that drove me to join the Labor Party, and it was here on this campus where I actually got properly involved in the party through the clubs and the student activism. I fondly remember occupying the Student Union building, and I'm pretty sure there was someone from the Socialist Worker at our event the other day who occupied it with me. And I'm almost certain I participated in the sit-in over at the old undergrad library. We were protesting students being charged fines for overdue books. Up until then, you just accrued points, which I thought was a fantastic system. Hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense of where my commitment comes from. It's very much shaped by wanting to make sure that university education is accessible to people regardless of their socioeconomic status, their SES for the researchers in the audience. In fact, that's been so important to me that I've barely been able to leave this place. I've pretty much continuously studied or tutored or researched here since then, so since 1995. I did have to say though I think I said it to the Vice-Chancellor a couple of weeks ago that I've been here more as a candidate than I think I ever was as a student. So a lot of campaigning here because the university sits at the heart of the seat of Ryan. It's so important to so many people, both in terms of their employment and their studies. So I've been campaigning here a lot. Let me move on to say a bit about why I think Labor is well placed to manage our higher education sector into the future. Like many policy areas, in the last couple of years we've been able to achieve a lot, but there is still much more to be done. Let me break down what we're doing into four areas. They're the 4 areas that NUS has broken down their asks on the Poly site. I think makes a bit of sense. More funding, improving access, supporting student representation, and making student accommodation more affordable. So on the more funding front, one of the great things we've done is we've abolished the cap that the Howard government put in place on student numbers. We expect by 2012 that will have resulted in 40,000 more full-time equivalent student places in our universities. That's important to step us towards our goal of we want to have 40% of all Australians aged 25 to 34 holding at least a bachelor degree. And removing that cap is a really crucial step towards that. So that's funding on the student placement side, student places side, but we're also investing heavily in university infrastructure. So the Education Investment Fund is currently a $3.5 billion investment. On improving access, which as I've tried to demonstrate to you is a really important area for me, we've done a lot of work around youth allowance, making it more accessible and more generous and more available. On that front, we're in the process of reducing the age of independence, so the age at which a young person is deemed independent from their parents, from 24 to 22. Changing the income tests, so both increasing the amount that one's parents can earn while their children receive the allowance, but also increasing the size of the student income test so that students can earn more while still receiving the allowance. And we've introduced a scholarship which I think by 2012 will be worth about $2,000 upfront to help with those upfront costs of university textbooks and that kind of thing. On the student representation front, Labor has consistently said that we support better funding for student support services. We have a bill stalled in the Parliament. Our intention is to allow universities to charge an annual fee of around $250 to fund those really vital support services, but to ensure that people students who can't afford it aren't excluded. You'll be able to defer that amount onto your HECS. And finally, on the student accommodation front, our National Rental Affordability Scheme, which is designed to make rental accommodation affordable across the entire housing market, is specifically available to universities and university-attached projects. So the ANU was the first university to apply for some funding under that program, and they've got 1,000 units of affordable accommodation coming online. I'm really hopeful that that's an area that other universities pick up and run with, because I think that can make a real difference to allowing people to stay at get to university, to stay at university, to not have to work 2-3 casual jobs like I did to finish their degree. So I think on each of those 4 points we're making progress, but there's more to do. That's why I signed the NUS Poly Pledge last week or the week before that pledged me, if elected, to keep supporting on each of those fronts. All of that's kind of from a student perspective though. We're also investing heavily in research, both research funding and research infrastructure. So just a week or so before the then Deputy Prime Minister became the Prime Minister, she was here on campus giving the university some $40 million to build a new medical imaging facility. That's just one example of the kind of research facilities we're rolling out that are great for students, great for researchers, great for local healthcare, ultimately great for Australians. All of that, I think, contrasts pretty starkly with Tony Abbott's approach. You know, when people make jokes about slogans in this campaign, and they make jokes about, Labor talking about moving forward and us saying that Tony Abbott wants to take us backwards, I reflect on watching this place change between 1996 and 2007, and I'd challenge any of you to argue